know that most of what you've seen, read, or heard about Billy the Kid is untrue? My name is Gale Cooper. I'm a medical doctor and forensic psychiatrist. My specialty is murder case consultation for the defense. For 20 years, I've used my expertise to uncover the real Billy the Kid. Researching over 40,000 pages of archival documents and books, I've written the revisionist history. It's shocking, it's liberating, and I've written books demolishing the hoaxes, hijacking the history. My talks will share with you what I've found. Cover-ups, misinformation, and fakery, to use Old West lingo, will bite the dust. This talk is about Billy Bonney's unquenchable humor. Its information is from my book, Billy the Kid's Writings, Words, and Wit. Billy Bonney stood out among his contemporaries for many reasons. One was his jaunty and ironic wit. That wit masked a lifetime of traumatic losses, but right down to his last known words, he never lost his ability to mock his fate. His wit had amused his cohorts enough to be recounted in their old age. Wit was Billy's weapon when captive, blasting truth through reporters' haze. Wit added to Billy's drama as the last freedom fighter against the Santa Fe ring, and wit punctuated his dialogue to his Lincoln audience from the high courthouse balcony at jailbreak when he announced that he was standing pat against the world. By Billy's Stinking Springs capture on December 22, 1880, he was famous. Locally, among his partisans, he was a bicultural freedom fighter. Nationally, via Santa Fe ring outlaw myth propaganda, he was a murderer, rustler, and counterfeiter. Facing his Messiah hanging trials, then facing unjust sentence, Billy gave newspaper interviews in the shadow of a noose, but defiant with lively humor and sardonic truth. We first see Billy's wit flashing in his pardon bargain letters to New Mexico Territory Governor Lew Wallace and Justice of the Peace John Squire Wilson. Those letters themselves are more extensively discussed in other talks. Billy's March 13, 1879 first letter to Wallace bristles with cockiness, bolstered by his allies' respect and his possible secret support by his Lincoln public official friends. Underneath all that, however, was this teenager's confidence that he was the equal to any man, governors included. So Billy jauntily preempted the lofty governor's intimidating dead or alive reward of $1,000 on his head as an outlaw. He wrote, "I have heard that you will give $1,000 for my body," which as I can understand it means alive, as a witness. I know it is as witness against those that murdered Mr. Chapman. On March 20, 1879, in his letter arranging sham arrest for his Wallace pardon bargain, Billy wrote tongue-in-cheek to Justice of the Peace Wilson as Friend Wilson. As I described in my talk about authenticating a new Billy the Kid letter, Wilson was indeed Billy's secret friend. He aided the pardon scheme, provided its fine stationery for its letters, and arranged Billy's meeting with Wallace in his house. Billy's letter to Wilson even playfully admits Wallace's name, making fun of Wallace's pompous letter telling Billy to keep their Lincoln meeting secret. Billy wrote, "Please tell you-know-who that I do not know what to do now." That same March 20th, Billy teased Wallace in a letter by playing on Wallace's having unsuccessfully sent troops to capture him as an outlaw. Billy wrote, "Perhaps I know how men hide from soldiers better than you." By Billy's December 12, 1880 letter to Wallace, and no pardon, his wit became testy. He wrote, "I noticed in the Las Vegas Gazette a piece which stated that Billy the Kid, the name by which I am known in the country, was the captain of a band of outlaws who hold forth at the Portales. There is no such organization in existence, so the gentleman must have drawn very heavily on his imagination." In his March 4th, 1881 letter to Wallace from the Santa Fe jail, Billy's wit became snide with his, quote, "patiently waiting," meaning its opposite. His other two letters had been ignored. He stated, "I guess they mean to send me up without giving me any show, but they will have a nice time doing it. I'm not entirely without friends. I shall expect to see you sometime today. Patiently waiting." He then signed, and the irony of not entirely without friends taunted rescue. Nearly being killed did nothing to sober Billy's wit. On January 3, 1880, a Texas cowboy and possible bounty hunter named Joe Grant was tempted by Billy's gunman reputation. Grant aimed for his back in Fort Sumner's Hargrove's saloon. His pistol misfired. Billy whirled. His bullet exploded Grant's brain. The Las Vegas Daily Optic quoted Billy, "It was a game of two, and I got there first." By December 28, 1880, captured Billy was interviewed in the Las Vegas jail on the way to the Santa Fe jail. The reporter was Lucius Lute Wilcox, city editor for J.H. Kugler's Las Vegas Gazette. The article would be titled, "The Kid, Interview with Billy Bonney, the best-known man in New Mexico." Billy simply teased and taunted any future hangman and his own fate. The reporter wrote, "Bonney was light and chipper and was very communicative, laughing, joking, and chatting with bystanders." "You appear to take it easy," the reporter said. "Yes. What's the use of looking on the gloomy side of everything? The laugh's on me this time," he said. Billy also used this Las Vegas Gazette interview sarcastically ridicule his Santa Fe ring outlaw myth. The article stated, "He was the attraction of the show, and as he stood there lightly kicking the toes of his boots on the stone pavement to keep his feet warm, one would scarcely mistrust that he was the hero of the 40 Thieves romance which this paper has been running in serial form for 6 weeks or more. There was a big crowd gazing at me, wasn't there?" he exclaimed, and then, smiling, continued, "Well, perhaps some of them will think me half a man now. Everyone seems to think I was some kind of an animal." Also, on December 28, 1880, but already in the train at the depot, Billy was interviewed again for the Las Vegas Gazette while awaiting departure to the Santa Fe jail. Billy's nonchalant banter adds ironic humor when one realizes that during it, the train was being detained by a mob on the tracks whose unclear intent was lynching or rescuing him. He said, "They wouldn't let me settle down. If they had, I wouldn't be here today." The reporter added, and he held up his right arm on which was the bracelet. Billy also joked about his Stinking Springs capture, concealing his grief of his friend Charlie Bowdry's killing 6 days earlier, mistaken for him. He merely floated a silly dime novel escape fantasy about jumping his famous bay mare out of the rock-walled line cabin's doorway. It was obstructed by a horse shot by Pat Garrett. Billy said, "If it had not been for the dead horse in the doorway, I wouldn't be here in Las Vegas. I would have ridden out on my bay mare and taken my chances of escaping. But I couldn't ride over that, for she would have jumped back and I would have got it in the head." About the deadly siege at Stinking Springs that had ended with surrender, Billy teased, "We could have stayed in the house, but there wouldn't have been anything gained by that, for they would have starved us out. I thought it was better to come out and get a square meal, don't you?" When the train finally started for jail and certain hanging trials, Billy avoided morbidity. He just joked. The reporter wrote, "As the train rolled out, he lifted his hat and invited us to call and see him in Santa Fe, calling out, 'Adios.'" On March 29, 1881, after 3 months in the Santa Fe jail, Billy was transported by train and coach to Las Cruces. A crowd of the curious waited. With Billy were fellow captive Billy Wilson, attorney Ira Leonard, who had protectively accompanied Billy, and their guards. Someone asked the group, which was Billy the Kid? Billy's cheeky response was reported in the April 3, 1881 Santa Fe Daily New Mexican's article, "Something About the Kid." Billy put his hand on balding, middle-aged Ira Leonard's shoulder. He said, "This is the man." He also mocked his outlaw myth. Billy said, "At least 200 men have been killed in Lincoln County during the past 3 years, but I did not kill all of them." In Mesilla, on April 15, 1881, 2 days after his hanging sentence, Billy was interviewed by a Mesilla news reporter. That same day, he had written a desperate letter to attorney Edgar Capeless about trying to sell his stolen bay mare for appeal money. For the article, after recounting injustices of his hanging trial, Billy made wry comments about mob law. He topped them with spoof, personal advice. He was quoted, "If mob law is going to rule, better dismiss judge and sheriff and let all take chances alike. I expect to be lynched in going to Lincoln. Advise persons never to engage in killing." About Lew Wallace's pardon promise, Billy said tersely, "Don't know that he will do it." And he worded his own tragicomedy. "I think it hard that I should be the only one to suffer the extreme penalty of the law." In darkness, on April 17, 1881, Billy was secretly taken by wagon from the Mesilla jail. Feared was his rescue on his way to Lincoln's jail and to hanging. Newman's Semi-Weekly reported his departure. It had Billy's literal gallows humor. It stated, on Saturday night about 10 o'clock, Deputy U.S. Marshal Robert Ollinger, with Deputy Sheriff David Woods and a posse of 5 men, started for Lincoln with Henry Antrim, alias the Kid. They stopped in front of the Semi-Weekly office while we talked to them. The Kid appeared quite cheerful and remarked that he wanted to stay until their whiskey gave out anyway. Said he was sure that his guard would not hurt him unless a rescue should be attempted, and he was certain that it would not be done unless perhaps those fellows at White Oaks come out to take me, meaning to kill him. It was, he said, about a standoff, whether he was hanged or killed in the wagon. Billy was fondly remembered by his Lincoln County war cohorts as frenetically exuberant and an inveterate prankster. George Coe, in his 1934 book, Frontier Fighter, the autobiography of George Coe, who fought and rode with Billy the Kid, told about Billy's teasing the older regulators in April of 1878. Coe wrote, "We made a big bonfire and sat around swapping lies and bragging. Then we talked about riding into Lincoln and setting in short order all the difficulties that were troubling the people there. We were a brave band, as we told it. Our guns, which formed the most important part of our possessions, had been placed carelessly around against nearby trees. Billy sized up the situation, and looking for a little fun and excitement with an inexperienced bunch of greenhorns, he slipped about 5 or 6 cartridges out of his belt and tossed them into the fire. In less than a minute they began to go off in such a mad dash for tall timber you have never seen. I looked back as I ran, and there stood the kid, with his arms folded, perfectly unconcerned. "Well, you're a damn fine bunch of soldiers. Run like a bunch of coyotes and forget to take your guns. I just wanted to break you in a little before we met the enemy. And boys, I'm sure proud of your nerve." After Billy's jailbreak, he arrived at his friend John Meadows' Penasco River Ranch, 42 miles to the south of Lincoln. The most hunted person in the nation, Billy was still joking. Meadows' memories were posthumously printed in a 2004 book titled Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid as I Knew Them. In it, Meadows included the scene. He wrote, "He showed up at Tom Norris and my ranch on the Penasco, about 4 miles below where Elk now stands. Tom Norris and I was in the cabin cooking some supper. Kid came up to the corner of the house, and seeing there was nobody there but us two, whom he could trust, he stepped to the door and said, 'Well, I've got you, haven't I?' I said, 'Well, you have. So what are you going to do with us?' He said, 'I'm going to eat supper with you.'" Billy's courage in the face of danger was famous among his admiring contemporaries. Less comprehended was his greater triumph. Facing injustice, about to end his life at 21, he refused to yield to rage and sadness. But for a moment, in his December 28, 1880 interview to the Las Vegas Gazette reporter, given from the train about to take him to the Santa Fe jail, he revealed pain. He said, "I don't blame you for writing of me as you have. You've had to believe others' stories, but then I don't know as anyone would believe anything good of me anyway," he said. I'm here now for him and the other freedom fighters to set the record straight.